Hello and welcome to the Bee Formless Flow Driven VC podcast. I will say all the way from Dallas, Texas, Tret Win. Welcome to the show, Tret.
Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. Let's get right into it, Tret, because we're going to have I'm going to use the word fair conversation. That's going to be the theme for our show today. And we'll get to the reason why we're talking about fair in a little bit. But you're the principal at Render Capital, which is a 15 million evergreen venture fund based in Louisville, excuse me, Kentucky. And Render Capital backs early stage founders building scalable businesses across middle America. And the focus is on unlocking innovation in these underlooked regions, which is that whole middle America bit. And I'm keen to talk to you about that. In your role, Triet supports sourcing diligence and portfolio growth, helping funders access capital, networks, and long-term runway. We've got a background in finance, venture analysis, and ecosystem development. And I love that you bring this perspective grounded in both the numbers and the human resilience. And what I'm going to also start with what is when you booked in for the pod, I asked a specific question around what's one unique insight or experience in life leadership and or investing. And this comes back to this fair point, right? And you said it's not right, but life's not fair. So tell us about your journey and then tell us about why it's not right, but life's not fair as well. If you can remember
Yeah,
all of that.
no, having to dive into it. I will say we render $15 million fund emerging. We specialize in investing in early stage companies outside of the coast. We're not an evergreen fund. I wish we were. I
Oh,
think that's a
sorry.
completely different investment thesis, which I think would be so fun to dive into. And I respect all the evergreen fund VCs. It's just completely different strategy. But yeah, well, we talked about resilience and really just whether it's in startups as a founder, as an investor, or I think in life, in general, if you ever played sports in the South in the US, you know that the motto there. But yeah, I kind of live by this quote by a singer in a song where he mentioned that it's not right, but life's not fair. And I
Who's the
take that
singer? Tret, who's the singer?
Black Bear.
Oh, okay. Yeah. If you can't just say I've got this singer and I've got a quote, like, who is it? Like tell it.
Yeah. Yeah, no. It resonated with me in a lot of different aspects, right? And when we talk about in startups, right, whether you're raising in the coast, in the middle of America, competitors moving faster than you because they're have more funding, valuation, whatever it is. I think a lot of times when I talk to founders, I hear the perspective of, oh, I'm doing $2 million in revenue. I'm having struggling fundraising. It's not fair that there are these founders on the coast and YC pre-revenue, pre like all this stuff, and they have a faster fundraise or higher valuation. And I kind of come back to that. It's like, what makes you think life should be fair? Like it's not right, but again, life's not fair. So why would you think that in the most competitive industry, trying to do the hardest things, anything should be fair, right? There's a reason why it's called competition. And I think innovation, capitalism is all about competition. So it kind of signals the type of founder mentality when a founder would rather spend time complaining, and just talking about how things are unfair versus some of the founders that I love to back, and I like to call them high agency founders, is that they are aware of what's going on and they just say, so be it. That's just another hurdle to get over. I'm gonna do it with or without you. And yeah, those are the kind of the founders I like to invest in. And similar for VCs, right? For us, when we go to fundraise, we talk to LPs and they challenge us like, why are you not investing in New York, Boston, or the Bay? Three cities that historically produce the highest returns,
Mm.
more unicorns, and those funds that are able to participate in those cities tend to have better metrics, right? Because their startups are able to grow faster,
Yeah.
um, and they're funded. We're not sitting and telling our LPs like, hey, you should give us a discount on our fund metrics because we don't invest there. It's no, we decided that that is our thesis because we do believe there's opportunities and venture scalable returns in middle of America. And when we are judged on our fund metrics, we don't want to be handicapped. We want to be right there next to them. It's like, see, we are in top performing funds regardless of where we invest. We were able to find and execute either way. So yeah, when we talk about resilience, I think that's the first step to resilience is forgetting and taking yourself outside of the things aren't fair, which, it's life, right?
It's
Why
so
should
interesting. Yeah, it's so cool because when I actually got the answer, I was like, I think I said this pre-show. I'm like, is he being negative? Is he having a bad day? Like, I was so curious and intrigued. But you've just landed what, like, now I get it. You're saying that, like, every day something happens, shit happens, sort of thing, right? And it's like you can either choose to say life is not fair, or you can choose to get on with it and take it on. And like you say, in competition or whatever, in sport, and perform and give it a red hot crack. But rather than just kind of going, life's not fair and coming up with every problem under the sun, like that, just kind of that but, what you're saying is, well, that's life. And you either choose to say it's not fair or you can do something about it. And so we have a saying in Australia, and I'm not sure if you do, if you've heard the term, the underdog. Have you ever heard the term backing the underdog?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's kind of like what we're talking about here, right? Like you're talking about what render capital, you look for that. And I'm not suggesting because they perform, but they're almost street fighters. They're people that are just that continue to that's that resilience piece. And I street fighters, I use that term loosely, but yeah, it's backing those founders, those businesses, even from the investing perspective, that are like there is possibility here. Life is not fair, but I see possibility. I see a way through this. Is it, I guess that's what you're talking about.
yeah, yeah, and I think it even scaled to next generation of aspiring VCs, right? A lot of times I hear students that book my office hours, and it'd be the same thing. It's I don't know why I'm not getting offers when this other person got it instead or and stuff like that. And I try to share my experience of breaking into venture where I I wouldn't consider myself coming from finance. I graduated with a marketing degree. I trade in the public market to pay through school. So that's where I learned finance. But I share with them like, hey, you're trying to break into an industry that is extremely competitive,
Yeah.
right? I essentially I applied to over 500 positions when I was applying for jobs. I got about 69 rejection letters. Most of them just ignored me. 12 interviews, and that led to two offers. So when that they're complaining saying, "Oh, it's not right that I applied to like 30 jobs and this person knew this person and they got a warm intro." It's like that's kind of life. Like if you think it's hard to get a job, you should imagine how hard it is to win allocations in really great startups. And if you're going to complain about not being able to, get in, then it kind of signals that hey, you might not last very, very long, right?
Mm.
Because I think fighting for allocation in a hot startup is a lot harder than like fighting for a job.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. And like for you, do you think that then informed how you approach life in terms of like experiencing like, all the rejection, the zero responses at times, the no feedback? I think that's kind of does your head in at times, but it's like I guess my question is what, excuse me, what kept you bouncing forward? What kept making you take one step in front of the other? Like you get all these no's and like, and now you're applying that in your own business. And, when you get these grads coming to you, the next generation from a VC perspective, what was it that in your own psyche like, that kept you going through that time? Because it's not easy. Like it's just this kind when you just get the radio silence or you get just no, no, but thank you. It's just like, oh my gosh, some days you're just like, I give in, I give up. But
Yeah.
it clearly was that resilience piece, right? But yeah, what was it?
Yeah, I think it's not just one major thing. I think it's the like adding up all the little things. So I was born in Vietnam. My parents moved here to the US, right? They I think I get a lot of resilience and just the entrepreneurial spirit from my dad. When he moved here, he was a Pizza Hut delivery guy, barely spoke English, had to learn English. After that, started his own newspaper company. So I remember waking up super early, sitting in the back of a van, packaging newspapers and making drops with him, thinking like, I know a lot of my friends aren't doing this on Saturdays and Sundays, morning all day. They're out and doing things. And then after that, he started his own tow truck company. Same thing. When on the weekends, I would ride with him, hooking up cars and doing all this stuff. And again, thinking like, why is this happening to me? Like, I just want to wake up, watch Cartoon Network like everybody else. I don't think it was right. And that I think slowly over time, as you mature, you realize that the world and life, it's not the prettiest of places, right? And you can either fall into that bucket of, hey, so be it, the world moves on, you either fall or you try to succeed and do the best you can. But I think for that particular experience of trying to break into VC, there was a moment where I was eating barbecue with a buddy who raised his own fund. He had the same experience. He came from Bain Capital, Goldman, like all the big private equity investment banking jobs and firms. But when he went to want to go work in VC, no one would hire him. And that was something that we share in that experience. For him, he was like, I'm just gonna go raise my own fund and do it instead of trying to, complain about it, whatever it is. And the same thing where I was telling him, like, I can't convert like into a job offer. And I actually joked with him, I was like, dude, they're hiring. Should I just go be a barbecue pitmaster? And he's like, no, I think you got it in you. And then right after that, I walked by a bookstore and I saw a book called The Last Lecture. Highly recommended it. It's an amazing read. And the story of the book is pretty much it is a professor who wrote that book while he had cancer. And it talks about resilience and
Mhm.
he talks about in life, how do you differentiate out what's worth doing and what's not worth doing,
Yeah.
right? And I think everyone at different areas of their life, industries, whether it's personal, professional, there's always going to be a brick wall. There's probably gonna be multiple brick walls. And something he talks about in the book is that the harder the brick wall you're against, it's never a signal to give up or anything. I think the only signal is to realize how much do I want what's on the other side.
Oh, Trey, you're coming out with all the good ones today. Like the music quote, this one, like that's amazing because how often do we just we're like, I'm banging my head against a brick wall. Like this is just like, but it's that ability to be like, how much do I truly want this? And I call me woo woo. Sorry, I interrupted you too, by the way, but I also call me woo woo, but I also think, sometimes the universe or whatever you want to call it has a way of like testing you out and testing how much you want something. Can you truly want it and how committed, how dedicated, how resilient you can be to actually get to that other side that you're talking about. I'll let you go back to this book, but I do love that whole analogy you're sharing, and you're coming up with some good ones. So thank you.
Yeah, no, you're good. That's pretty much the entire point of the book, right? And that was the reflection. It's how badly do I want what's on the other side of the wall, which was not just a job in VC, but what I believe it's more than just a career, is essentially a calling, right? I've been a
Interest.
founder. I'm not going back to being a founder. That was way too hard. I'm not doing it again. I think being an investor, obviously, especially an emerging fund, still has some of that entrepreneurial spirit and lifestyle, but it's very different from being a founder. Which is why I tell a lot of founders who exit a company and they're going back to be a serial entrepreneur. I kind of tell them like, you are a different type of insane. I stopped after the first time, and now I'm an investor. You, for whatever reason, went through all the hardship, ups and downs, and you say, I want to do it again. So
But
yeah.
you sound, but like, correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been a founder. You've now got renter capital. You're still somewhat like, like you said, you're an emerging fund, but you're still somewhat, like an entrepreneur, right? Like you haven't just kind of, yes, you're an investor, but you've still got that's don't they still kind of somewhat stitched together, like in terms of, do you know what I mean? Or is that like, have I got that wrong? Like, isn't there some aspects still? Yeah.
I think there are some overlapping, and they're definitely tied to each other. Obviously, for us, because we're a small team of three, the hours, right, are somewhat comparable. But I think it's very different that I don't wake up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning stressed on how to make payroll. How am I going to report to a board of directors? And how am I going to keep the lights open tomorrow, and all that stuff? Um, don't get me wrong. I wake up
I was
and
about to say, what do you wake up and stress about? What keeps you awake at night then? Like, you don't have that stress, but there's
yeah,
got to be other, like, and there's good stress, right? There's healthy stress, there's not so good stress, but what then keeps you awake at night?
yeah. I think for me, what wakes me up at night is, oh, am I doing everything I can to generate alpha? Does that mean that, am I doing everything in our powers to help our companies? And I think sometimes a lot of people misunderstands like, hey, we're VCs, we're here to support you and give you wings. It's not our job to operate the company for you. Don't get me wrong, there are situations as board members, investors, that if a company is, trying to run lean and they need help hiring, changing some of the tech stack, or talking, figure out manufacturing, distribution, stuff like that. We're happy to come in, have those conversations, and be essentially the band-aid, not the replacement, right? I think where some founders, expect too much of their VCs is that, oh, you expect capital, you expect us to be at your beck and call. We're still humans, we have lives, right? We're happy to take calls after hours, but give us a heads up. Ideally, if it's an emergency, if you want to do a brainstorm session, shoot me a text. And then we kind of work that out. I think there was one founder that, we essentially passed on, was we noticed that in diligence, he was very slow to respond during work hours, which is fine, right? We get that during work hours, you're scheduled with other investor meetings, sales, stuff like that. But the random calls after 6 p.m., and they're not short calls, they're like long calls. And then on top of that is how frequently it was happening. And this was in diligence. So like, we're not his investors yet. I think it kind of showed a little bit of a disrespect for time management, for other people's time management. And I think one of one of the stories on that one was a co-investors that we were thinking about doing the round with gave me a call and he was like, "Hey, you're not gonna believe what I just went through." I was like, "What's going on?" It's like Friday. Obviously when co-investors call you on Friday night, you're expecting like, is this some bad news happening with one of
Yeah.
the poor code? But it's a company that we haven't invested in yet. And he kind of mentioned, well, I'm with my girlfriend's family and we were having family dinner, but then this founder called me and I thought it was gonna be a quick call. It turned into like a 2.5 hour work session. He needed help like building out his financial model for the fundraise. And I was like, that's why. Like if he's going to a fundraise, that should have been prep. And again, it's not your job. You're not investors yet. Like we can give advice and do stuff like that. But it was the last minute, hey, can you hop on a call real quick? He said yes, thinking it's like 5 minute conversation, turn in 2 hours, and then it is one of those things where it's like, okay, if we do invest this kind of signal, like what the working relationship is going to be, because again, for us working with founders, right? Yes, we understand that there's certain stuff that are urgent and an emergency that you need to hop on and handle. But again, is like this isn't, yeah, we're not your piggy bank
Yeah, no,
for
it's really
capital.
interesting. It's really interesting because two things are coming up for me. One is that, from an investor angle perspective, it's setting boundaries, right? Like in terms of if you're going to take a 5 minute call and it's 5 minutes, it's like, having the ability to say, look, I've got 5 minutes. I'm at a family dinner. We can't continue like 2.5 hours versus 5 minutes. It's pretty wild. But then the other thing that's going on for me is then how do you solve those problems? Because from a founder perspective, it sounds like it's that classic meetings all day, reactivity, and then at night it's like, oh, I need to get to my strategy now, and oh, I need to call the investors or my fund and kind of like speak to them and get advice. Is that a common problem, or is that kind of more of an anomaly, like in terms of like, do you see that there is potentially a solution to how you solve this? And that is that by setting up, like I call it a shared clear goal, right? Setting expectations from the outset in terms of like, this is, when you talk about the diligence phase, is it more around being clear from the outset? This is how we work. This is what we expect. What do you expect in return, etc. Like, is that something that is discussed often, or is it more of a problem that you see? Yeah.
Yeah, I think these traits are very easily said than executed, right? I think, and that's something that we kind of stress test founders on, right? So for us, in my first meeting with a founder, I'm trying to figure out, is this a person that if it's Sunday afternoon, F1 just ended, football's about to start, I need to set my lined up, and they call me with an emergency saying, hey, things just hit the fan. I need the board's help. And like we need to figure this out. My reaction is like, okay, let me cancel the rest of Sunday, happy to go to the office, and let's knock this out. Now, it's very different when it's happening too much and that surprise,
Yeah.
because then at that point you're wondering, why is so many things on fire,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Reactivity.
is this a founder that is in control of themselves, of their company, stuff like that, right? I think the other aspect of it, it signals to us, do I need to babysit this founder?
Yeah.
Because again, back to the example, not having your financial models prepped before a fundraise, that's then why are you fundraising? Like that should have been locked down, right? It's not something that you try to build mid fundraise. That kind of shows like, okay, we might have to babysit this founder, and that's not what we're in the business for, right? We're here to hold founders accountable, support them, and all this stuff, but we're not babysitters. Because again,
It's a mutual relationship. Trent, I want to pivot for a second because I think this will also feed into what I want to talk to you next about. But you guys focus on Middle America in terms of that's where you focus, and you said you get questions around why aren't you focusing here and in other parts of America. Why Middle America? And what are you seeing? Is there anything emerging coming out of Middle America that you guys are seeing that is, if it's the new frontier of VC, etc.? And
yeah,
do you see more, just on your experience, do you see more of this reactivity coming out of certain markets or like areas versus, or do you think it's just a common issue that can quite often happen, and it's just down to the specific founder? So I don't know if that question's making sense, but why Middle America? Like, is it what are you seeing that's emerging coming out of Middle America? And then the second part of it is the reactivity of certain founders. Is that coming from these areas, or is it just a thing you see in general?
yeah. So for us, why we decided to invest in Middle America, it kind of comes down to if you look at the US GDP, right? I will admit a good portion of it comes from, states like New York, Boston, San Francisco, and those cities and stuff like that. But a lot of the GDP comes from Middle America states, and those primarily comes in certain industries such as advanced manufacturing, commerce, supply chain logistics, food and bev, and stuff like that. So that's essentially those, that geo focus gives us insight to what industry we want to invest in because of where certain states are strongest, whether it's due to ports, the commerce doorway down from, I think Detroit all the way down to Texas through Nashville and Louisville, Kentucky, and all that good stuff. And we do see and hear a lot of stories, right? Founders in the past, they would used to have to move to the coast to raise
Yeah.
capital. And now, especially I think after COVID, remote work, all that stuff has been more capital injected to funds like ours, where LPs recognize like, hey, we want to diverse our portfolio. We understand that now with remote work, you can work anywhere you want and things are a lot cheaper in middle America. So like, you know, living costs, stuff like that. So that obviously reduce burn for companies, right? And then something that we also kind of noticed, if you look at the trends of market like merger and acquisition over the past few years, you also notice that for Mid America startups, they're getting acquired.
Yeah, right.
Now, make headlines of massive acquisition? Not really. I mean, I think the ballpark was 100 to 450, $400 million acquisitions, right? Which if we're able to get in between the 10 and the $20 million valuation, understanding that yes, middle of America companies don't raise as many rounds or as many large rounds. So they really have to depend on capital efficiency. Most will get really close to break even, and if not profitability, because they know that help isn't coming. Like we're a small fund, and like there's a lot of funds like us. We can't bankroll you guys. You have to figure it out, and that obviously affects for us as investors. We don't get diluted as much when they do raise. So then when they get acquired, which typically by massive coast unicorns, either acquiring them for their distribution in Middle America or a bunch of different reasons, the returns are still pretty good,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And then it kind of goes down to like our LPs, right? They align with us, and it's in our LPA that we don't invest in those three regions. And I'm sure if you want to look at the capital flow, they probably generate alpha or benefit from jobs staying here, innovation or
Yeah.
is being made here and stuff like that. So, yep.
Yeah, right. And so what do you see as next for Render Capital? Like what's the ambition without giving away all your trade secrets? What are you guys three there's three of you. What's your what's your North Star? Like where are you how big is this going how big is Render Capital going to be? Is it going to take over the whole of the middle of America? Like what's the plan?
Yeah, I mean, I think the North Star vision is essentially like everybody knows where there's a startup, LP, VC, private equity, whoever it is, it's hey, if you want the best innovation coming out of middle America, render capital is on the cap table, right? And obviously that is going to be more than just fund one, fund two, right? I think for us is that survivorship game, getting into fund five, fund seven, and really be a household name for startup innovation in middle America, particularly in the Midwest and the South. I think, for us, fund one was 15, fund two will be about 35. And I joke with a lot of our investors, our team. I think anyone who knows me at this point knows that if we ever raise more than $100 million at one individual fund, that I'll be on the market. Just because I don't want to manage a massive fund, right? I think my particular taste and appetite, it's small funds under $100 million. And obviously, when you add multiple funds over, the AUM could be crazy. But yeah, to stay nimble and really stay lean kind of keeps us down to earth, right? Because
Yeah,
like you mentioned, team of three, a lot of what we need to do to punch above our weight class to compete with larger funds, it's I get to build out our back office. Software, automation, workflow. And I think that kind of feeds that little bit of that founder
yes,
hungry without
exactly.
actually having to be a founder,
I love it.
but it keeps me connected. It's like, okay, these are the tools that are on the market I'm playing with. I don't like how the UI UX is for this one. And I think that kind of creates inspiration for whenever we do create different thesis to do research and then go hunt down companies.
Yeah, I love it. I think you've got to be across the business, but also on top of the business, right? Like, you've got that visionary, but also the understanding and seeing how you implement it through, which I think is so important. And I love that you brought up this nimbleness, you brought up this adaptability. But you've also got to be like, I don't think you mentioned the word humble, but I get from you, you exude this confidence, right? But it's not arrogant confidence. Like, I could see you on the racetrack right now. And if I said to you, hey, Tret, let's have a 100-meter race, a sprint race, you'd be like, game on. But you've got this great confidence that it's, it's got real humility about it, and I love that. And I think we need to see more of that in what you're doing and in the VC space, or in the world in business in general. Like, there's nothing wrong with having this confidence, but how do you do it in a way that isn't aggressive, isn't arrogant? I mean, this is my last question to you. What's your view on that? And then what would be one piece of advice you would be giving someone who was struggling with their self-worth, and kind of when it comes to confidence. And I know that's a bit of a random question given what we've been talking about, but I think it's important to share.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to really just understanding what's for you, like what's not, right? I think understanding like end of the day, it's on you. And I think that's a blessing and a curse, right? If it's on you, then hey, it's on you
Yeah,
to put in the hours, put in the work
get it done.
and all that stuff. And I think end of the day, also you just need like a little bit of luck, right? So I think try to be lucky, do all the things that you can to generate luck. I think my advice is for anyone that's struggling with confidence, self-worth, whether it's personal or professional. I'll I'll say this quote, but by I guess two different quotes that I tied together by two mentors of mine when I was fresh out of college, and I was telling them that, hey, I feel like I'm a little bit behind. I haven't figured out what I wanted to do, and this was before I wanted to, go to VC. And I was working with startup founders, and everyone was like amazing, incredibly smart. And I did felt a little bit of insecurity when that happened, right? And one of my mentors kind of told me, like, hey, know this, no one's better than you. All that's different is the difference in time. They were able to have the time to accumulate resources, education, whatever it is, which if the difference is in time, then that kind of shows you just need to put in time to better yourself. And then there's another mentor of mine. He kind of mentioned this is the motto that keeps him balanced between confidence and ego slash insecurity.
Yeah,
He said his perspective on life and everything is that no one is better, or it was a, oh, I don't think I'm better than anyone, but I don't think anyone's better than me,
oh, that's cool.
right? I think I answered your
You know, you
questions
totally
there.
did. I love it because it's just you're the quote guru, like, but you've also got all this amazing lived experience, and I love what you're doing, and I love the way you're focused and your determination, but you do it with such humility and also just it's holistic in terms of like you're looking at everything, right? And you're very clear and very focused. And I love where you're taking venture capital. And I can see you're going to have huge amounts of success. You probably will hit that 100 million, and then you'll be like, I'm on the market. Be careful what you wish for, right? Trent, how do we find out more about you? How do we find out about Render Capital? How do we get more wise words, quotes from you? I feel like you should be, I think you might, like, you need to be sharing more of this on your LinkedIn. Because I think everyone
Yeah.
needs to hear this in terms of whether you're a founder, whether you're in investing, everyone has their own moments of questioning themselves, right?
Yeah, LinkedIn, Triet, I'm pretty responsive most of the time. If you shoot me a connect, if you put at least a note of why you're reaching out, that definitely helps. I will say I'm pretty slow on that side just because my LinkedIn DMs are like a black box. Um, or you can shoot me an email, which my email address is on my LinkedIn. So you might do a little bit of work, scroll down to look at my experience where it says render capital, and you find my email address there. Yeah, and then there's render.capital. We're pretty open about a lot of stuff. I don't put out too much content just because I like to save that time to have conversations like this where it's a little bit more
Yeah, awesome.
intense. Um, yeah,
Thank you so much, Trent. I've really enjoyed the chat with you, and it felt right. It's been a fair conversation. I feel like it's been a really good conversation. So I'm glad we got to the bottom of your response, and yeah, I've really appreciated talking to you today.
no, thanks for having me. Really enjoy the conversation.
Yeah, have a great afternoon. Take care.
Thanks, you too.